Alternative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
What is going on, y'all? Welcome to the Mission Ready Men briefing right here on the SHR Media Network, where faith in God is the standard and masculinity is not up for negotiation. Today is Thursday, March 19th, and we have a ton to get into. You know, they're supposed to be protecting the country, protecting the citizens, us, we the people. And some of them can't get through a hearing without it devolving into a schoolyard dispute among children. When these politicians, they argue in Washington, communities are quietly doing what the government won't, which is what the founders really intended. You have churches and synagogues hardening their security, and while parents are walking their kids into schools that don't. And it's really sad, and we're going to get into that. It's the same country, two completely different levels of protection, two completely different realities. And the message, excuse me, is crystal clear. You are on your own. And I say this all the time. So let's get after it. Hey, Canada Heavy Hall, thank you for being in the chat. I appreciate it. So I was watching this yesterday live, and I was doing other things on my computer as I was listening to it. And then I heard something and I was just like, I can't believe he just said that. And I'm talking about the hearing, the confirmation hearing for Senator Markwayne Mullen for DHS Secretary. They are supposed to be protecting the country. And Rand Paul, acting like the little petulant child that he is, immediately turned it into a schoolyard dispute. It was, the only thing I could think of was, why is he being such a little sissy? People will wrong you. People will offend you. And sure, an apology is nice if they recognize that they did something wrong. But it shouldn't be the sole focus of your existence. Because a lot of times you're not going to get an apology. And a lot of times they're just not sorry. But this hearing, it basically just turned into, and I didn't watch the whole thing, but it basically just turned into Rand Paul going after Markwayne Mullen, and he called him out for it too. And we have a couple of clips we're gonna show you. Rand Paul, he claims to be this great libertarian. He's not his dad. Ron Paul is a very principled libertarian. I don't agree with a lot of what libertarians stand for. As I was getting into politics and paying attention, I have some libertarian leanings on certain things, but I'm a conservative. And Rand Paul, Thomas Massey, and a few others claim to be libertarians. I haven't been able to really stomach Rand Paul for a while, and this this hearing didn't do much to burnish his reputation in my eyes. But let's take a listen to, or take a listen to what one of these exchanges between Rand Paul and Markwayne Mullen.
Programs, you chose to lash out at me. You went on to brag that you'd already told me to my face that you completely understood and approved of the assault. Well,
okay, right off the bat, he's trying to frame this as Markwayne Mullen thought that what happened to Rand Paul when he got attacked a few years back by his neighbor was a good thing. He never said he approved of it. Markwayne Mullen said, I understand why he did it. Now, you can understand why people do things and still not approve of them. You can understand, you can take into account the fact that some people invite conflict. Some people invite things like this to happen and still not condone it when it does, but say, yeah, I get it. I get it. But anyway.
that's a lie. You got a chance today. You can either continue to lie or you can correct the record. You have never had the courage to look me in the eye and tell me that the assault was justified. So today you'll have your chance. Today I'll give you that.
And he never said it was justified. He only said, I understand it. But he's a typical politician. And this is something that the people on the left do. Leftists do this. They will take words, they will take things and twist them to fit their agenda. And that's exactly what he's doing right here.
That chance to clear the record. Tell it to my face. If that's what you believe, tell it to me today. Tell the world why you believe I deserve to be assaulted from behind, have 6 ribs broken and a damaged lung. Tell me to my face why you think I deserve.
Tell me to my face. Say it to my, come on, man.
Deserved it. And while you're at it, explain to the American public why they should trust a man with anger issues to set the proper example for ICE and Border Patrol agents. Explain to the American public how a man who has no regrets about brawling in a Senate committee can set a proper example for over 250,000 men and women who work at the Department of Homeland Security. Senator Peters, you're recognized for your opening comment.
Okay, that's not exactly the clip I thought I was going to play, but it served its purpose nonetheless. That was definitely schoolyard nonsense. Say it to my face. Shut up. The business at hand is confirming or not confirming a nominee for Secretary of Homeland Security. That personal stuff has no business. Okay, I can understand mentioning it, but he spent, I would say, probably 15 minutes total on that. Ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Markwayne Mullen apparently he's getting bipartisan support. I mean, he just passed out a committee by an 8-7 vote. Rand Paul voted against him, and John Fetterman voted for him. So he passed out a committee, and it's going to go to the full Senate. But the business at hand had nothing to do with whether or not he believed that Rand Paul deserved to get beaten up, which he didn't deserve what he got. And Markwayne Mullen never said that he did deserve it. He said he understood why the attacker did what he did. Let's see if I want to play. Yeah, let's take a look at this one, because this one was pretty good too.
If he'd only been brave enough to stand up, you'd have jumped over the dais and taught him a lesson, because that's how men should settle their differences. Do you think fighting as a resolution for political differences is a good example for the men and women of ICE and Border Patrol?
As you can notice over my shoulder here is my good friend Sean O'Brien. Both of us have had conversations, both of us have shaken hands, and both of us agreed we could have done things different. Sean is someone that has become a close friend. We talk all the time. I've been on his podcast. We've talked through this. That's how you handle your differences. Not like this, Chairman.
He said not like this. And this was after Rand Paul played the video of Mullen and O'Brien getting into their verbal confrontation in a Senate hearing, where he said, "We can settle it right now. Stand up and we'll go." Maybe this says a lot about me. I kind of appreciated it. I know that's probably not the way things are supposed to be done. And Mullen admitted it just right here. But at the same time, things get heated. And O'Brien didn't stand up, but he gave as good as he got verbally. Let's go. I get it. Like I said earlier, I don't condone it, but I get it.
I'm glad you guys are friends now and that you've reconciled. But really, it doesn't get to the real point whether or not you think violence is the way we settle things. In the days after the fight, you said, and I quote, "Sometimes people just need to be punched in the face." Is that still your opinion, that political disputes can sometimes and often only be resolved by violence?
No, I don't always agree with that. I don't believe in political violence. I've made that very clear. But sometimes people do need, theoretically speaking, sir, I get it. It's about character assassination for you. That's the way this game is played. I understand it. And you are making this about you, which is fine, but that doesn't keep me as Secretary of Homeland Security.
Character assassination when you were the one lauding the assault. Who do you think started that character assassination? I'm just repeating what you have done in character assassination. I'm repeating your support for the assault.
Again, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but come on. He was not supportive of it. This is Rand Paul trying to, I guess you could call it character assassination. But I like the way Mullen handled it here. This was good, and like I said, he passed out a committee and going to go to the full Senate, and I think it's not going to be a blowout. I think it may come down to J.D. Vance. It may be a 52-48 type thing, but we'll see. But while this is happening in Washington, and this was a clown show, honestly. And while this is happening in DC, while they're trying to figure out who is going to protect us, who is going to oversee our protection, our security. People on the ground are not waiting around for it. People on the ground are making their own decisions, taking their own security into their own hands, not debating, not waiting, preparing, which is as it should be. And as I said earlier, it's what the founders envisioned for this country. You have, and we're gonna dive into this a little deeper, but you have churches and synagogues hiring armed security, implementing layered protection protocols, controlling access. And that's all well and good. They're not waiting for the government to do it. They're doing it on their own. They're private entities, and that's what they should do. The police have no obligation to protect us. They have no obligation to they have no obligation to really do anything. They're a reactive force, unfortunately. But in contrast to that, we have schools, still soft targets, and still depending largely, I know that there are some that take it seriously, but still depending largely on police and sheriffs, still reactive, despite all the threats. Despite all, I mean, we see it all the time. And knowing that with what's going on in Iran, sleeper cells have been activated. I mean, in what, a matter of a week, we had 4 terrorist attacks. And as long as, I was going to say, as long as what's going on in the Middle East is going on, it's going to happen. As long as we have radical Muslims in this country, regardless of what's going on in the Middle East, it's going to happen. When this type of thing happens and it devolves into political theater, security inevitably falls by the wayside, especially when we're talking about this. While they're bickering in Washington like they're on a school ground, people are actually trying to figure out how to protect themselves. And so while we're watching this devolve and fall apart, as I said, people are taking things into their own hands. And I mentioned synagogues and churches. They're not waiting around. They're not waiting around for this madness. They're assessing their risks. They're acting. They are implementing security protocols, visible security, trained personnel, controlling their entries as any good security apparatus would do. The Synagogue Security Council of North America, which I just heard about, is an organization that has Jewish Americans with law enforcement and security experience. They are training security personnel in synagogues to prepare for these worst case scenarios, like we just saw at Temple Israel. And they reacted and they neutralized the threat. And they have trained, apparently, tens of thousands of volunteers for this very scenario. One of the directors of this organization said that we have to stop delegating our security to the government, to third-party security organizations, to outside organizations, regardless of how good their intentions might be, and take accountability for ourselves. I have said this time and time again. I end every show. When seconds count, the police are only minutes away. And it's not just, I'm talking about this organization for synagogues, but it's not just synagogues, churches too. Before we left Texas, I served on our church's security team. And a lot of churches are doing the same thing. I haven't heard of a formal organization like this for churches, but nonetheless, it is a great thing. And so why is this happening? Why are churches and synagogues doing this? Well, as I mentioned, we're seeing all these attacks, and it's basic pattern recognition, especially with the synagogues, with the attacks on Jews. They saw the need to protect themselves. This organization I just mentioned, they came into being. They formed in 2018 after the attack at the Pittsburgh synagogue, which the name of it escapes me at the moment. But that's when they recognized, that's when they realized that they got to do something. And I think the same is true for churches. You're not waiting around for the government to protect them. They're not waiting around for the government to send an armed security force every Saturday or Sunday or whenever they worship. Nor should they. They took responsibility. And so that brings me to this. Why is it not the same for schools? Schools they house our most vulnerable people for 8 hours a day, 8 to 10 hours a day. They're the most vulnerable. They're fixed locations, fixed schedules, and yet there is minimal hard security in a lot of these places. No controlled access. There was just one, I believe, in Texas, where some guy just walked up into a school armed. Thank God nothing happened. Thank God they were able to deal with it without any violence erupting. But how does that happen in this day and age? They rely on policy. They rely on police. And we've seen too often how police don't always react the way that they're trained, the way they should. Jesus said in Matthew 18, verse 6, and this story is relayed in Mark and Luke as well. But he says, but whoso shall offend one of these little ones which believe in me, it were better for him that a millstone were hanged about his neck and that he were drowned in the depths of the sea. Now, I know the context for that is a little different than what we're talking about here, but the sentiment remains the same. If you harm kids, if you are intent on harming kids, then you deserve the worst punishment imaginable. And there should be people around to deliver that punishment. Whether the perpetrators survive or not, that's another matter. But if they do survive, then they need to be put on trial and punished accordingly. Think about this, and I've said this, I've written about this, and I've said this on various platforms over the years since a lot of this started. We protect banks with armed security. We secure concerts and sporting events with armed security. Politicians and celebrities, they're surrounded with layers of executive protection. Well-trained, highly trained Secret Service executive protection details. Yet when it comes to kids, our most precious commodity, those same measures are beaten back. They don't want to have armed security. They don't want to have armed teachers. They will fiercely resist all of that, even though they're the ones that benefit the most. It's sad and it's infuriating because we put more emphasis on our money and our entertainment than we do our children. Same country, same threat environment, and completely different responses. One is one of responsibility, and the other is this laissez-faire, it'll never happen. Meanwhile, it happens far too often. And so why are some places hardened, and why do some places take security seriously while others are exposed to all the danger? And I talked about it, I mentioned it in passing earlier. It's not that we don't have the resources to do it. We do. We just don't have our children as a priority. I've said before, they hate you. They hate you. They hate everything that you stand for. And they hate your kids. That's why they want to abort them before they're born. And that's why, well, in some states after. And that's why they don't want to invest anything in and protect them in any real way after they're here. And I know people don't want to hear that. I know people think I'm being hyperbolic, but the evidence speaks for itself. The evidence is there. They prove it all the time. Every time they resist hardened security measures, every time they resist armed personnel in schools, every time they say they can't afford to do any type of controlled access in these schools, every time they say that, they are telling you that they couldn't care less about your kids. It's not about principle. It's not about, it's about priority. Your children are not a priority to them. Your security as a whole is not a priority to them. If it was, they wouldn't fight so hard against, they wouldn't fight so hard to put in gun control measures. Common sense gun control. there doesn't seem to be any urgency around it either, which is bizarre to me, because I can't understand how protecting children is not of the utmost urgency. Because when there is something urgent at hand, that's when action takes place. But where it's not, they just spend time endlessly debating, endlessly berating anyone who wants to implement hardened security measures, and nothing ever changes. It's about willingness, not capability or resources. As I said, the resources are there. The capability is there, but the willingness is not. And in private schools, where private schools do it, that's great. But we have a lot of public schools that are just hung out to dry. The system can act when they want to. It just depends on what their interest is. Same country, same threats, but some doors are guarded and some are just thrown wide open, just like the border. Just like the border. Thankfully, we have someone in control right now who slammed that door shut. But if they take power, if the left takes power, they are going to throw it wide open once again. And give everyone who comes in a driver's license and a voter registration card and say, have at it. You know it and I know it. But that's a story for another time. When protection like this, security like this is uneven, when it's applied unevenly, people who are paying attention notice. Now, there are people who just blindly go through without a care in the world. Those are the people who you see walking down the street, head buried in their iPhones. Those people couldn't care less. But when the protection like that is uneven, when the security is uneven, then the enforcement on these things is not equal either. And we are going to get into that after break. But I want to take a break right now and get into our sponsor for today's show. And our sponsor for today's show is Patriot Mobile. And now, more than ever, your vote matters, especially considering all the ways they're trying to cheat you out of your vote. But not only does your vote matter, but your wallet matters as well. And that's why we switched to Patriot Mobile, America's only Christian conservative wireless provider. They actively support pro-life, pro-family, and pro-freedom causes because they are, like I said, our only Christian conservative wireless provider. And they support these causes with every dollar you spend with them. So right now, get a free month of service at patriotmobile.com with promo code Jackson, or call 972-PATRIOT and use promo code Jackson. Defend freedom with every call, every text, every month. Switch to Patriot Mobile today. patriotmobile.com/Jackson. Jackson. All right, y'all. I am Big E, and you are watching or listening to the Mission Ready Men briefing right here on the SHR Media Network, where you can catch our great lineup. Sackhead Sean every Monday and Wednesday at 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 Pacific, on the edge of Liberty. And then we have Jersey Joe, the Reaver of Common Sense, every Monday and Friday at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. BZ in the Berserk Bobcat Saloon every Tuesday and Thursday at 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific. He will be on tonight, so be sure to check that out. And then the new guy, Lyle Armstrong, with Beer and Bullstein every Friday and Saturday at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. Please like and subscribe and share all of these great shows. Subscribe to the channel. And we're growing. We are up to 1,250 subscriptions, I believe, and that is fantastic. It wasn't that long ago when we were at, I don't know, 300, 400, 500. And we're growing every day. And so we really appreciate it. Thank you all very much for subscribing and sharing. But continue to pray for us that we push through. Right now, the algorithm is trying to put us in a chokehold. So we're growing slower, but we are still growing. But continue to pray for us that we continue this breakthrough and break through this current algorithm choke so that we can reach as many people as we possibly can. All right, now back to the briefing. And we talked about the way that they apply these things, security, protection, and whatnot, unevenly, and how some places adapt and others stay exposed. Enforcement is the same. Enforcement is the same. Just recently, it's been a few days, and I didn't get a chance to talk about it in the past couple shows, but I wanted to make sure I got into it. But recently, a Texas jury convicted a group of 9 individuals linked to Antifa. 9 North Texas Antifa cell members were convicted for rioting, using weapons and explosives, and providing material support to terrorists. They were also tried for attempted murder on an Alvarado police officer and an unarmed correctional officer at the Prairieland ICE Detention Center on July 4th of last year. Now, I have been reliably told that Antifa is just an idea. Haven't you?
You try to create a new classification for anybody on the left who opposes Trump as somehow a member of Antifa and a terrorist.
Yes.
Like, this is coming. And I don't think we are fully now. I don't think there's any the problem. Like, I don't even know what Antifa is. I know what the definition of Antifa is, and
I know what the word means, but it's not a group.
There is no group.
No.
Mark Bray, you are writing this book, Antifa, the Anti-Fascist Handbook. Explain this movement and its roots.
Mark Bray is a Dartmouth professor who has studied the Antifa anti-fascist movement. Antifa is a far-left political movement that argues it's necessary to confront hate groups, sometimes with force. Professor Bray is author of the new book, Antifa, the Anti-Fascist Handbook.
But I thought it was just an idea. Excuse me. But yet, these people were just convicted. Organized activity, violence tied to this left-wing ideology. And finally in Texas, they got tried and convicted. And so when the system decides it wants to act, it can and it will. And this is Texas. This is Texas. And so they take these things a little more seriously than other states do. But the laws exist across the country. The tools available to enforce these laws exist. It is possible to hold these people accountable. But for whatever reason, a lot of jurisdictions choose not to. I mean, we saw during 2020, we saw during 2020 how many people on camera committed crimes and nothing happened. No charges or minimal charges, no jail time, or minimal jail time that what didn't come close to being proportionate to the crimes that were committed. I mean, look at what happened in Seattle. I mean, there was this was Black Lives Matter, not Antifa, but there was a guy who was kicked in the head as he was sitting down on the ground after being dragged out of his truck, kicked in the head brutally. And I believe the person who did that is out of jail now. Selective enforcement. There was another case. Well, there were several cases, and we're gonna get into some of them. But there were these. It really blows my mind that so much of this stuff has just gone unpunished, unreported. And they try to tell us all the time that it's this nebulous, amorphous idea that has no concrete evidence that it exists. There's no power structure. There's no structure at all to it. It's just a group of people who have this ideology, these ideas that really don't do anything. The problem, well, one of the problems is that when they engage in this violence, it's not labeled consistently. Attribution becomes selective, like we saw during the Summer of Love with the Antifa and BLM riots. Almost nobody was held accountable. I shouldn't say almost nobody. Very few people were held accountable for the violence that took place. There was one really, I don't want to say famous case because for some reason it didn't get reported and it didn't get attributed to Antifa violence, even though the person who did it actually admitted to doing it, and he was a known Antifa member. I'm talking about Aaron Danielson. He was murdered on camera, and the person who did it ended up ended up dying. But when you talk about left-wing violence, this incident didn't get reported as left-wing violence. And there are a number of others that we'll get into, but check this out. Because this, and I've played this before, and you can't really see the actual murder, so I'm not gonna, that's not the point. The point is what you can hear on camera.
I love it when I hear revving engines. Not really, it kind of scares me.
He said, we got a Trump supporter here. We got a Trump supporter here. And then he fired 2 shots. And the perpetrator of that crime admitted that he did it, admitted why he did it, and it was not reported, excuse me, it was not reported as left-wing violence. In fact, none of the violence that was that happened during the George Floyd riots, Antifa riots in 2020, none of that was attributed to left-wing violence. The 20 plus who were killed during the George Floyd riots, the 60,000 officers that were assaulted, Darrell Brooks in Waukesha, who ran down a bunch of people during a Christmas celebration, killed 6, injured 70, not attributed to left-wing violence. And it wasn't that long ago, I believe it was last year sometime, there was a poll that went out that said, or that asked the question whether or not violence was acceptable against your political opponents. Always unacceptable. 77% of Republicans said it was always unacceptable. I'm kind of surprised it was that low. But 38% of Democrats said it was unacceptable. And then 44% of those Democrats said it was sometimes acceptable. And 66% said that the murder of Donald Trump would be justified. And we could go on and on about all of the violence that's happening. And I don't want to beat a dead horse, but I mean, if you pay attention, you know that this is true. You know that this is true. So the fact that these people were found guilty in Texas is outstanding. Hopefully it becomes the standard across the country. I doubt it. It won't in places like California, Washington, Illinois, Massachusetts. It won't. But obviously it should, and hopefully as time goes on and people realize that the left is a bunch of lunatics bent on destroying this country, we can take it back and bring back some semblance of order to this, because this is unsustainable. This is completely unsustainable. Justice should be the same across the board. It shouldn't depend on where you live. in places like Texas and Arkansas, Florida, you can be relatively sure that justice will be served. In places like California and Illinois, you can be just as sure that justice won't be served. All right, I want to pivot because something else happened recently that also kind of dovetails into this, and into this whole discussion that we're having today. Joe Kent just resigned from his position as director of counterintelligence. And this guy, when I first heard of Joe Kent, he was a war hero. I believe he was running for Congress in Washington. And when I first heard of him, he was a decorated war hero, Gold Star husband, seemed like a solid guy. And then you realize that, well, it took a while for me to really realize what kind of a person he was. And I learned even more since his resignation. Oh, I want to before we get into this, I want to thank you all for being here in the chat. It is always entertaining to see what people are talking about. I appreciate you being here. Thank you all very much. And thank you to the mods who are in the chat, holding it down and making sure that people are abiding by the rules. I really appreciate that. But getting back to Joe Kent. As I said, decorated war hero, seemed like a solid guy. He lost his elections. He ran twice. He lost twice. And then Tulsi Gabbard selected him to be head of counterintelligence. And it was at that point when I started to see some of the things that he had said over the years. Where did it go? He has had a number of conflicting positions over the years. At one point, he was registered as a Democrat, or he voted as a Democrat in Washington. They don't register by party, but he voted Democrat. He voted for Bernie Sanders. And some of the things that he said prior to him aligning himself with President Trump were definitely leaning left. And then he saw an opportunity to get on the Trump train, and he did. And he started saying things that he knew would get him a ticket on the Trump train. And I had some of his tweets, but I don't know where they are. But that's all right. But he had tweets where he talked about how Iran was a threat and Trump had a plan. And then he gets in as director of national intelligence and counterintelligence and has a complete 180. Complete 180. And there have been some interesting theories as to why that is. his new wife, like I said, he was a Gold Star husband. He's recently remarried, and his wife works for a left-wing organization that hates Israel. I think it's called Grayscale. Nevertheless, that's not his wife isn't really the issue. The issue is that he did a complete 180 and went public with his resignation. And when I first heard his resignation, he said he couldn't support what was going on in Iran, and he resigned. And I was like, okay, that's good. At least he didn't do a Mark Milley and call the enemy and say, hey, this is what's going to happen. Or did he? Because as it turns out, he has been accused of leaking classified information. And that is one of the reasons why he was let go, or why he resigned. The the issue being that he had been shut out of a lot of briefings. He was suspected of leaking classified information. And now it turns out that he probably left because he knew he was about to be, or he knew he was under investigation and it was about to become public for leaking this classified information.
Sources are saying that Joe Kent, the former director of the United States National Counterterror Center, this is from Semaphore, he just resigned. He's now under FBI investigation for allegedly leaking classified information. And the investigation predates his departure. Congressman, your reaction to that tonight? Wow.
Well, there's a lot there, and I think that we need to let this investigation play out, but we shouldn't tolerate any leakers in the administration, particularly regarding classified national security interests and information. So we'll let this play out and see where it goes, but if he was leaking, he ought to be held accountable just like anybody else would be.
Absolutely. And the other issue, one of the biggest issues aside from leaking classified information, which is a huge problem, is his apparent anti-Semitism. And I know that's kind of hard to see, but I'm gonna read part of it. He says, I cannot in good conscience support the ongoing war in Iran. Iran posed no imminent threat to our nation, which, as a combat veteran, I am stunned to hear him say that. Iran has been at war with us for 47 years. We just didn't want to acknowledge it for whatever reason or reasons. But they have been attacking us, chanting death to America, calling us the great Satan. They have been at war with us for years. And they have been sponsoring terror attacks all over the world against our personnel. How is that not an imminent threat? But he goes on, and it's clear that we started this war due to pressure from Israel and its powerful American lobby. And there it is. There it is. He has been on record, as I said before, saying that Iran is a threat. There's a really great tweet where somebody put up Joe Kent's tweets about Iran and how they were a threat, and then another one with this ridiculous resignation. But I mean, the fact that he said that we're doing this at the behest of Israel is just ridiculous. It's the Jews. Everything is always the Jews with these people. And it's ridiculous. It is utterly ridiculous to think that President Trump is going to do anything just because. I mean, these people think that President Trump is basically a puppet of, well, first he was a puppet of Putin, now he's a puppet of Netanyahu, which is, again, just utter nonsense. And here we have somebody who is no Trump fan by any stretch of the imagination, basically saying the same thing.
We know this president well enough. If it were true, he'd be saying it right now. He'd be saying, I shouldn't have listened to Bibi. Boy, did he have this wrong. He is not slow to throw people under the bus if they lead him into a bad position. I can't get anyone around him other than the guy Joe Kent, who just resigned, who gives that a shred of credibility that this president did anything in Iran that he didn't want to do.
Exactly. Exactly. And this is from Chris Cuomo, who's no conservative, no fan of Trump by any stretch of the imagination. He kind of low-key dug at him a little bit just there. But yet these people, it's the running theme that it's the Jews. And of course, who did Joe Kent run to immediately after his resignation? Tucker Carlson. Now I haven't watched his appearance on there yet. But he went to Tucker Carlson, and those clips of his show, of his appearance on that show have been shared by Iran's regime state media four times in the space of an hour. And he also apparently, and I haven't heard this yet, but apparently he has implicated Israel and the United States in the murder of Charlie Kirk. There is absolutely nothing else I need to know about this guy. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. He is a lunatic on the order. I mean, he went to Tucker Carlson's show, who was also a lunatic. I haven't spent a whole lot of time talking about Tucker recently, or Candace Owens, the other lunatic, Nick Fuentes, and all the rest of them. I might talk about them. I might get into it at some point. But yeah, this has been a propaganda win for Iran, which makes me wonder. Because the organization that his wife works for has ties to Iran. has ties to Qatar. The Grayscale, I believe it's edited by Max Blumenthal, who works for Al Jazeera, Russian state media RT. I mean, I don't have any evidence of that, obviously. But at the same time, the coincidences are almost impossible to ignore. This is, and the fact that we have this anti-Israel sentiment this high up in the government is a problem. And I'm actually kind of surprised he resigned, but I guess then again, he was under federal investigation, so he probably really didn't have a choice. But who he chose to speak to right afterwards is telling. And when you consider that, along with the other coincidences, that tells you a lot. That tells you a lot. All right. I got a couple other things I want to get into. We have an issue with a meteoric rise of left-wing Marxist, communist, anti-American politicians in a number of high positions. And we've talked about Abigail Spanberger in Virginia. And she is doing her level best to destroy Virginia. Absolutely destroy Virginia. She ran as a moderate on this thing of affordability, and the first thing she did was implement, 50 different new taxes? A dog walking tax. But she's going to make things more affordable. But anyway, there was a special election in Virginia's 98th congressional district. And a Republican won. A Republican won. And it's caught a lot of attention. It's caught a lot of attention in conservative circles. The American Pravda hasn't really talked a whole lot about it, if at all. In fact, I think all the stories I've seen, except for maybe one, have been on conservative media like Town Hall and Breitbart. Hopefully, this is part of a larger pattern, especially in Virginia. Right now, it's just an aberration because Virginia, as I said, or as I have said in the past, Virginia is, well, they elected Spanberger. That should tell you. They elected Spanberger and they elected a Muslim lieutenant governor. So that should tell you a lot. Now, the only reason that they were able to win is because the population centers in Virginia are all centered around DC. And there are so many of those left-wing lunatics up there that they were able to overcome the rest of Virginia, which is still largely conservative. And part of the problem is that Republicans just don't turn out for whatever reason. I don't understand it. There are enough to overcome it but they just don't vote. And as I said, I don't get it. But the fact that this Republican did win in Virginia says a lot about how quickly, because I mean, she just took office in January. It says a lot about how quickly things can turn, especially given how, I mean, she wasted absolutely no time in imposing all of these ridiculous taxes and going after the Second Amendment. These people, so the people who elected this Republican, I'm trying to find the story that I was that I read. There were a few, but I can't find it. There were a few stories I read that put a lot of stock in this being somewhat of a turnaround. I don't know that that's entirely true, at least not yet. It's far too early to make that assumption. This could have just been an aberration. This could have just been a fluke. But it also could be an indication that Spanberger could be a one-term governor. PJ Media says, yeah, let's take a look at this. PJ Media says that Virginia voters rebel against the Democrats as a new fault line emerges, the fraud party versus the GOP. And this has to do with the gerrymandering that Virginia is trying to do. And Andrew Rice defeated Cheryl Smith in a special election by 25 points, which is huge, because Spanberger won that district by almost 7 points, which means what, plus 18 points, an 18-point swing. That's insane. That almost never happens, which is either an indication that Republican voters are completely fed up in this district, or there may have been some shenanigans going on during the general election. Who knows? I mean, would you really put it past Democrats doing that? If you would, you're not paying attention. So this election was a bit of a signal. We'll see how it plays out going forward over time. Like I said, it could have just been an aberration. There could have been some shenanigans going on, which is why there was such a wide swing, because that's almost unheard of. That is almost unheard of. But we'll see. We'll see, because this ties into something else that I've said multiple times in recent weeks and months, that people don't trust the system, which is why I brought up the possible shenanigans. But when people don't trust the system, every election sends a message. And so right now, the question is, what is going to happen next? Because it's been a running theme over the past month or so, maybe longer. The system is broken. The system is broken. Trust in the system is gone. And so the system is either going to correct itself and stabilize, or the system is going to seize even more control. And we absolutely do not want or need that. All right. I had one other thing I wanted to get to, but it is going to take entirely too long. So I will forego that, because there is one other thing that I want to say a lighter note, but it's really not, because it's actually quite sad and scary. But I don't know if you're familiar with someone by the name of Caitlin Bennett, who she does these man on the street interviews with people and asks them questions. She did one where she read a quote, and everyone thought it was President Trump, and it turned out it was Kamala Harris. She's done some really good work. And I came across this the other day, and I want to say I was blown away, but I really wasn't. It was more sad than anything, but some people may find it surprising. But she did a man on the street interview about who would you rather hang out with, or who would you feel safer around? A MAGA person in a red hat or a radical Islamist? Just take a wild guess.
Who do you have more in common with, a Trump supporter or a radical Islamist?
Radical Islamist.
You saw someone wearing one of those red hats chanting "Make America Great Again," or you saw someone shouting "Allahu Akbar" running down the breezeway here. Who would you feel more safe with?
The one shouting Allahu Akbar. Yeah.
You would support the radical Islamists.
Yeah.
What is it about Trump supporters that you don't think you'd get along with them so well?
I'm gay.
Tell me you have no idea what you're talking about without telling me. These people really believe that radical Islam has no problem with them being gay. They have absolutely no clue that their fellow homosexuals have been thrown off of buildings, stoned to death, shot in the street. And she really thinks that she would get along better with a radical Islamist than a MAGA supporter. These people are clinically insane, or clinically stupid, or both.
But you would get along with a radical Islamist?
Yes.
And you're gay?
Yes.
In solidarity with radical Islamists, would you look at the camera and say in solidarity, Allahu Akbar?
Allahu Akbar.
And would you?
What do you even say? How do you react to this?
You say "Make America Great Again" in solidarity with the Trump supporters?
No.
What is a bigger threat to America today, radical Islam or Trump supporters?
Trump supporters.
I'll say Trump.
Trump supporters in MAGA.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would say Trump supporters in MAGA.
I would have to go with the Trump supporters.
Trump supporters in MAGA.
Trump supporters in MAGA.
I'd say MAGA. But we should be able to allow people to be who they are.
Yeah. Even if they're a radical Islamist.
Yes. There's no right to judge them.
So if someone came running down the street, Allahu Akbar, or if there was someone on the opposite side saying, make America great again, got my red hat on, which side would you run to?
I don't know.
As Christians, and we're following Christ, do you think it's important to call out radical Islam?
No, because it's a freedom of religion.
Yeah, it's a freedom of religion.
How many terrorists?
Oh my goodness. These people are aggressively stupid.
Attacks did Trump supporters engage in last week?
So many.
Just guess.
Thousands.
If you're a radical Islamist watching this right now, we pray for your conversion.
It's whatever they want to do, then do it. Whatever
They want to kill you. They want to subjugate you. They want to kill you. And this moron just said, whatever they
want to do, then do it. Whatever they want to do, then do it. Whatever they want to do, then do it. Whatever they want to do, then do it. Whatever they want to do, then do it.
Who did that?
Aggressively stupid. I really struggle to understand how these people function in life. We just had 4 or 5 different Islamic terror attacks in this country. And somehow they still think that they're safer with a radical Islamist. And I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be the least bit surprised if some of these people actually have seen imams talking about how they want to take over the United States, how they want to take over the world, how they want to subjugate Americans. I wouldn't be surprised if some of them have seen that and either don't believe them or think it'll never happen. Meanwhile, in Texas, and I know I talked about how Texas got it right with the Antifa people, but meanwhile in Texas, they are letting mosques open up all over the place to the tune of what? I want to say like 2 or 3 a month or something like that. They're letting restaurants serve halal food. They're putting halal food in schools in Texas and in Florida too. And I would not be the least bit surprised, as I said, if some of these people saw that and just didn't care. Just don't think it'll ever happen. A lot of people never thought an event like 9/11 would happen. It did. Radical Islam has been at war with the West since its inception. And it has been systematically spreading its poisonous cult through conquest and violence for 1,400 years. What in that history suggests that they're all of a sudden going to stop? Nothing. These people hate you. If you convert to Islam, they'll love you. But as long as you're an American who doesn't practice Islam, who doesn't support Sharia, as long as that's the case, they hate you. And they would just as soon kill you as look at you. And if you're gay, even worse. And yet these people just, they're either oblivious or stupid. There is no in between. And I bet a lot of these people that she's interviewing were not born, were not around during 9/11. That is a sad commentary on our culture. It really is. And that's part of a longer, I believe 30-minute video on YouTube that you can check out. You may not want to because it may be too depressing. I don't know. But that is one of the saddest, stupidest things I have seen in a long, long time. All right, y'all. That's going to be it for this briefing. I will be back next Tuesday. We're actually thinking of doing a regular Saturday show. It won't happen this Saturday, but the idea is we'll recap or react to some of the stories that we didn't get to during the week. A little lighter, a little less prep, just kind of letting it rip, seeing what goes on. So let me know in the comments if you think that's a good idea. You want us to do that. Once again, thank you to the moderators in chat for holding it down. Thank you all in chat for being here. I appreciate it. But yeah, that's going to do it for this show. I'm not just here to yammer into the ether. I'm here to try to help equip Christian men and spread the gospel of Jesus Christ and carry the banner of faith, freedom, and hope into the next generation. And if any of what we said here today matters to you, don't just watch. Please like and share and subscribe. Bring another guy into the fight. And if you want to wear what you stand for, head over to missionreadymen.com, click Shop 7 Armors, and there you can check out the SHR Media Shop as well, and take a look at the 250th anniversary shirt, 250 reasons to read source documents, and all the teas for all the guys' different shows on the network. And also check out 7 Armors and all of our shirts there that talk about bold faith, true grit, and unapologetic patriotism. And remember, when seconds count, the police are only minutes away, but the Lord is right there with you. So keep your prayers going up and your head on a swivel. God bless.